Well, the guy I'm refuting, he thinks that he's killed creationism. We're hanging our hat on bacteria that we think had to have been created by an intelligent designer. He's saying, oh, look at this bacteria over here, and it's doing this with that similar design over here. And it didn't have certain elements that the advanced bacteria had that had a different function. And he's comparing apples with oranges all the time. Sad to say, that's what evolutionists, that's all they have left. Apples and oranges. Dumping conclusions without a scientific approach. Anyway, this guy says, as word of the relationship between the eubacterial flagellum and the TTSS has begun to spread among the design community, the first hints of a remarkably similar reaction have emerged. The TTSS only makes problems worse for evolution, according to this response, because now there are two irreducibly complex systems to deal with. The flagellum is still irreducibly complex, but so is the TTSS. But now there are two systems for evolutionists to explain instead of just one. Yeah, with that cockamamie apples and oranges, you can make anything into what you want, because you're already excluding the possibility of an intelligent designer. How can you exclude it? You know, a designer could design a rock. Doesn't have to have super complexity with it. You can't eliminate it because you don't think, you don't believe in one. It's not a matter of faith or unfaith. It's a matter of, how did that rock get there? You can't explain it specifically. And I can say, well, an intelligent designer put it there. Can you say no? You have proof no? I have proof sufficient to say the plausibility, especially considering the complexity of things beyond rocks, can also be explained easily by an intelligent designer. But this guy goes on. Unfortunately for this line of argument, the claim that one irreducibly complex system might contain another is self-contradictory. To understand this, we need to remember that the entire point of the design argument, as exemplified by the flagellum, is that only the entire biochemical machine with all of its parts is functional. Well, yeah, take out a part. Just take the battery out of a car. See what happens. For the intelligent design argument to stand, this must be the case, since it provides the basis for their claim that only the complete flagellum can be favored by natural selection, not any of its component parts. No, I didn't say that. Stuff can hang around. For the intelligent design argument to stand, this must be the case, since it provides the basis for their claim that only the complete flagellum, well, we're talking about a particular one, can be favored by natural selection, not any of its component parts. But the problem is the component parts may also have to be, some of them are complex, may have to be there at the right place at the right time. However, if the flagellum contains within it a smaller functional set of components, like the TTSS, then the flagellum itself cannot be irreducibly complex by definition. Why not? Remember, we're looking at one thing at a time. So the entire flagellum, bacteria, is functional only if all the parts are there to work together. You have components part flying all over the place. Take a look at each one, and probably you'll find that it also has to be created by an intelligent designer. Since we now know that this is indeed the case, it is obviously true that the flagellum is not irreducibly complex. Phony reasoning. The second reaction, which I have heard directly after describing the relationship between the secretory apparatus and the flagellum, which they have different functions, is the objection that the TTSS does not tell us how either it or the flagellum evolved. Well, who's supposed to tell who? You're hearing voices? This is certainly true, although Isaiah has suggested that the TTSS may indeed be an evolutionary precursor of the flagellum. Maybe it is. What is the science? Nonetheless, until we have produced a step-by-step account for the evolutionary derivation of the flagellum, one may indeed invoke the argument from ignorance for this and every other complex biochemical machine. You can't invoke an argument of ignorance. You're just ignorant, right? If you don't make one experiment on one biological thing that you see, that one bacterium with the flagellum, take off the flagellum, see how it works. Take out a component that you see missing in another life form and see if that flagellum with the bacteria there works. You didn't do that. However, in agreeing to this, one must keep in mind that the doctrine of irreducible complexity was indeed intended to go one step beyond the claim of ignorance. We're not talking about ignorance. We're talking about whether it's scientific or not. It was fashioned in order to provide a rationale for claiming that the bacterial flagellum couldn't have evolved, even in principle, because it is irreducibly complex. Now that a simpler functional system, the TTSS, has been discovered among the protein components of the flagellum, the claim of irreducible complexity has collapsed. No, it hasn't. You can't compare apples and oranges, and with it, any evidence that the flagellum was designed. Here's my answer. You evidently have not taken out one component in a system, in a species, such as the locomotion system in a particular bacterium, and replace it with a simpler one from another species, such as the TTSS species, that uses it to toxify its host for a different purpose, in order to see if the first species of bacteria works properly. Have you? You talked about, well, ignorance and all this. Well, have you experimented? And if this works, such as with heart transplants, it still does not refute an intelligent designer by using his designs to repair or alter something he created in the first place. So some things can be around that have been created and floating around were originally created by an intelligent designer. You can't throw that out. And you can't say this Ford truck, simple model, basic, low on the bottom of the line, the components in it, it operates. Now you take a Toyota luxury car, or a Ford luxury car, but let's go to the Toyota luxury car, got everything in it, worth 5 or 6 times, and far more complex components. But some of the components in a Ford are similar in function, or not even in this TTSS thing, compared with the bacterium with the flagellum, which uses the flagella for locomotion. The other one uses it to throw out toxins in its surrounding. So, not the same thing. So you want to put a carburetor in the place of a battery. Take the carburetor out of the Ford, because it's working, similar to, and then put it in the area where the battery is. You're talking nonsense. It's apples and oranges. So, an intelligent designer remains plausible. Just because you can prove evolution, you can also say, well, that doesn't disprove an intelligent designer who can make a rock or a very complex thing called the human body. With all the things that if the blood clotting system, the brain, the heart, the lungs, the kidneys, all these things, if something isn't working, that human doesn't live very long, if at all. And how does it procreate? Wow! Does it procreate and give birth to a Ford motor car? So, creationism or evolution, because it takes a lot less time, and the intelligent designer evidently fails less and evidently cares more for his creation. All right, we got combinatorial argument. I didn't know there was such a word, combinatorial. Well, my dictionary is not that reliable. Anyway, combination of something. At first glance, William Debsky's case for intelligent design seems to follow a distinctly different strategy in dealing with biological complexity. His recent book, No Free Lunch, lays out this case using information theory and mathematics to show that life is the result of intelligent design. Why not? That's what science does. Dembski makes the assertion that living organisms contain what he calls complex specified information. CSI. Okay, all right. And claims to have shown that the evolutionary mechanism of natural selection cannot produce CSI. Therefore, any instance of CSI in a living organism must be the result of intelligent design. Yeah, I mean, you ever heard of Sir Isaac Newton? Something complex that's less in complexity cannot create something that's more complex. Now, I know you've done scientific experiments in the laboratory, but you are the scientist. You're the human being. You're the most complex thing in the universe. And you use your ingenuity to take something less complex and form something more complex. That's a total flaw in their argument. Because I am more complex than what I can create. I can't create something more complex than me. Even a computer. Put it all together and it does stuff to itself. But it's still not as smart as I am. Dembski makes the assertion that living organisms cannot contain what he calls complex specified information, CSI, and claims to have shown that the evolutionary mechanism of natural selection cannot produce CSI. Therefore, any instance of CSI in a living organism must be the result of intelligent design, and living organisms, according to Dembski, are chock full of CSI. Yeah, how about DNA? Dembski's arguments, couched in the language of information theory, are highly technical and are defended almost exclusively by reference to their utility in detecting information produced by human beings. Well, go to the top of the food chain. You're going to ask an ant to produce something? Can't even talk to an ant. These include phone and credit card numbers, symphonies, artistic woodcuts, to name just a few. One might then expect that Dembski, having shown how the presence of CSI can be demonstrated in man-made objects, would then turn to a variety of biological objects. Instead, he turns to just one such object, the bacterial flagellum. Well, you know what? Fine. You don't have enough time except to do one thing at a time. So you're going to attack the entire field of microscopic organisms in one book? It would take 10 to the 10 millionth books to do that. One thing at a time. You make a case for one thing. Intelligent designer, maybe design something else. Dembski then offers his readers a calculation showing that the flagellum could not have possibly have evolved. Significantly, he begins that calculation by linking his arguments to those of Behe, writing, I want therefore in this section to show how irreducible complexity is a special case of specified complexity. And in particular, I want to sketch how one calculates the relevant probabilities needed to eliminate chance and infer design from such systems. I read his book, Behe's Darwin's Black Box, and he does it well. Dembski then tells us that an irreducibly complex system, like the flagellum, is a discrete combinatorial object. What this means, as he explains, is that the probability of assembling such an object can be calculated by determining the probabilities that each of its components might have originated by chance, and that they might have been localized to the same region of the cell. Yeah? Why not? And that they would be assembled in precisely the right order, and, I would say, the right time, right position, everything. Dembski refers to these three probabilities as Porig, Plocal, and P-config. All right, who cares? Get to the point. And he regards each of them as separate and independent. This approach overlooks the fact that the last two probabilities are actually contained